Hello everyone, and welcome to another Mondays with Michelle video. This is the third video in my military research series. This week we will explore several websites featuring World War I photographs and trench maps. We will also examine some Air Force resources and explore an interactive website covering World War I shipwrecks. Let's get started. So we've talked about the British newspaper archives before when I did the presentation on newspaper websites. So even though this is a paid website, I did want to show you a few newspapers that will be useful if you are wanting images or information specifically on World War I. So there was a publication, a newspaper called The War, and that has now been added to the British Newspaper Archives collection. So if you go into one of the issues, just to give you an idea, you can see how much of the publication is actually photographs of what was happening. And I'll just bring up one of them. So it's the photographs with the appropriate captions and information. So that might be of interest. Another newspaper that British Newspaper Archives has added is one called War Pictures Weekly, and it later changed its name to London Illustrated Weekly. So again, if we take a look at, these are some issues from 1914. If I click on that, and you can see again all the thumbnails, and I'll just click on one of the pages. So you can see some of the types of illustrations they had. If you have a Find My Past subscription, you would have access to these newspapers because Find My Past does contain the British Newspaper Archives collections. If we look at advanced search, just to give you some idea of what other World War I specific newspapers they have, there is the War Office Times and Naval Review. If you have ancestors who were in the Navy, that might be something that would have some useful information for you. There are also a few other papers worth noting. There is War Savings, and we've already looked at this one called The War. So there are a few different papers that may help you with your research for your World War I ancestors. I did also find some free resources, and free is good. The War Illustrated was a magazine issued, and you can see just with the thumbnails on this particular image here, you can see the types of photographs, the coverage, and this is available for free through the Internet Archive. So that is a useful resource. So still on this same Internet Archive site, which we've talked about before in the presentation I did on newspapers, I filtered the information, limiting it to just the years of 1914 to 1918. And what we're showing here is a number of issues of the Queenslander newspaper, which was Australia's newspaper with all kinds of photographs, again, covering World War I activities. So let's take a look at one of them. Okay, so this Queenslander pictorial is going to give you that same type of photographic newspaper as what some of the London publications were showing. So those can be useful if you are wanting to get more of an idea of what it was like for the soldiers. I think the photographs can really help us understand what was happening in a different way. Now, I also found this website with all kinds of links to American newspapers that had not just pictures of what was happening in the battles, but also they had all kinds of photographs of soldiers who served or were killed. So I will be giving you the link to this website so that you can check out some of those American sources if you are trying to find out about your American ancestors. There is also, this is a free site, there are some extracts from the Illustrated London News. So another link with possible items of interest. And this one I found interesting. I came across this reference to the Illustrated Chronicle, a Newcastle newspaper, and they did a project to take pictures of soldiers. There's 11,000 images, and put them on Flickr. And Flickr is something I did talk about in a previous presentation, but I'll just show you, and I will give you the link to their Flickr site. So this is set up under the albums link. If you just go to their basic Flickr page or click photo stream, you see all of the images with the person's name. But if you click on albums, they've grouped them by date. So it makes it a bit easier if you're looking for a soldier who maybe was injured in a particular time frame. You can zero in on these date ranges to find his picture, because it will have been grouped based on when the picture appeared in the newspaper, would be my guess. So that's another possible resource. Now, another source of interest is trench maps. And what I really liked about this particular website, it has an excellent write-up about the trench maps. And one of the things I found interesting that caught my eye was this section here. They talk about the fact that the British, and I would think Canadians, Americans, anyone who did not speak French would have their own names for some of these hard to pronounce French places. So it talks about what some of those names were and how some of these places had nicknames. So for instance, they talk about the village of Auchanvillers. They called it Ocean Villas. And Dirty Bucket Corner was the northwest section of Ypres. So it explained a lot when I started looking through my grandfather's war diary and was trying to fit the place names that he was recording to real places. And let's just say there were a couple of them where, even being a bit generous with the spelling, I couldn't figure out what the place was. And when I read this little explanation, it explained why some of the names that he kept referring to didn't seem to match up with anything I could find on the map. So I thought that was an interesting explanation. As I said, I found this page really helpful. So looking at trench maps, one of the sites I found is the Canadian McMaster University website. And what I like about this, they have aerial photographs. They've got aerodromes and hospitals. There are all kinds of different series of maps, battle plans. We've got billeting area maps, bridge strength maps, all kinds of different things in here. Now, they also have the trench maps. And there's a few things I really like about this website versus some of the other websites I've used. So we've got our grid system here, and you can type in a name. So what I did, I pulled up the document I created from my grandfather's World War I war diary, and I'll just show that to you. So he had actually named quite a few different places. And we've got Fremicourt, Vaux. So I thought, well, let's find out this particular place here. He's got it as Fremicord, and I couldn't find that place anywhere. So I typed it in, FREM, with an asterisk, with a wildcard, and pressed enter. And it pops up another window. And I thought, that's why I couldn't find it. He put CORD, and it's actually Fremicourt. So if I look at that section of the map, which is 57C, that's this sector. And if I click that, it's going to show me all of these different areas available. And if I say this is the one I want, and it's thinking, it's now going to bring up that particular sector, and I can zoom in, I can take a look, and hopefully track to the information in his war diary where he was and the different places. So that I found was a useful resource. National Library of Scotland has something similar. So again, I could type Fremicourt, and it brings up that area. So those are two resources that have trench maps for World War I, which can be very useful. Now, another website that I found, and this was an article from Family Tree magazine, and they were talking about Air Force research and a website that a professional genealogist, Claire Wilson, has set up for Air Force research. And there's a few things. Her website, she is an individual that does paid research, but there are a lot of free resources on this website, which is why I wanted to show it to you. So for example, if we click on the projects link, there is World War I Airmen, Bomber Command Losses, Fighter Command Losses. If we click the Bomber Command Losses link, you come to this particular page with links to individual names with biographical information. So you may be lucky enough to find one of your ancestors in that particular listing. There's also fighter command losses, and this is a project that looks to me as if it's very much in its initial stages. There are some names here. So again, you click on the link and you'll get some information related to that entry. So those are some resources that are definitely worth exploring if you are doing Air Force research. She also has a resources page with useful websites, but one of the main reasons I wanted to show you this site is this webinar series, and I've got the link already up here. So for the 2023, they are doing free monthly webinars, and they have the topics, a little description, the speaker's name. You can take a look to see what they will be talking about, and you can sign up for their newsletter to be notified about the webinars. So that might be of interest to some of you. And as I mentioned, their link for useful websites. She's got an awful lot of links here for different museums and worldwide as well, not just the UK, but we've got Italian Air Force Museum, Brussels Air Museum. So again, those of you who are doing Air Force research might find there's some really useful links on her website. So we've talked about some of the photographic sources for newspapers. We've talked about those of you who are doing Air Force research. This is a useful site to give you some links. Let's talk about this website, Forgotten Wrecks of the First World War Project. I thought this was a really interesting website. So when you first come into the website, it looks like this. And basically, these arrows, it's like a little interactive tutorial to learn how to use the website. So if we click next, it's prompting you, click to open the control panel. So that's your first step. You open the control panel and you can search by a vessel name if you want. So I could type in, they said type in camber, press return. And they will show you any entries that match. You click on it and it zooms in, and what it's showing you is the spot where that vessel was wrecked. And if you click on the dot, and this is the only thing I find, is sometimes it's hard to actually activate the dot itself. So when you click on the dot, another information box pops up with all these little symbols, and hovering over those symbols will tell you what other items might be available. Then that's what the tutorial is telling you. And we can click on details, and then it pops up a new window on the right with the details about that vessel. And you can explore the rest of the symbols by clicking up here if you don't want to do it from the small pop-up. So what I'm going to do is, let's just reset this. And I'll skip that. And I'm just going to show you a few things. So right now, we are seeing all the shipwrecks. But at the bottom of the screen here, we have a sliding timeline. And notice, as I slide it along, the number of dots displayed is changing because it's showing only the wrecks at that point in time, because this is based on the date that the shipwreck happened. So we can also change the results. I can say, just show me a particular type of ship, and it will limit the display based on that. The most interesting part for me, though, is saying, okay, I want to see only those entries that actually have a detailed report and images. So now, if I were to close this panel down, if I hover over one of these and then click, and I now go to video, there's a video clip here. And if I click on photos, I can look through photos of that particular wreck. And if I look at details, it's going to give me information, the details about the wreck. So I thought this, again, was a very interesting website. It's the kind of website you could spend quite a bit of time playing around with. So that was one I thought was worthwhile looking at. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Don't forget to download the handout. You'll find the link in the video description at the bottom of your screen. You may need to click Show More to see the handout links. Thanks for watching.